Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the PB podcast. Today's topic is an interesting one, something that actually, my brother Waqas, we tend to discuss this quite a lot. We tend to discuss what is good management in a general level, first of all, so on an org level with the Quran Institute and all the other subsidiary organizations. We tend to talk about good management, oversteering, understeering, over-explaining, under-explaining, good comms. And I thought what would be a interesting discussion would be to go and see, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a role of leadership, supervision, provision, and a means of serving, serving the wife, right? So what I want to do is we're going to work our way down the details or the attributes or descriptions of what it means to be a qawwam. So I want to first introduce the topic, inshallah, to our listeners, our viewers. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa, He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ar-rijalu qawwamun ala nisa. First part of the ayah, that men are qawwam ala nisa. Bima faddala Allahu ba'dahum ala ba'din. With what Allah has preferred one over the other, meaning the men over the women, right? Now, the interesting thing first and foremost is that the word from qiwama, this idea of leadership, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this word qawwamun. Qawwamun is plural for qawwam, and qawwam comes originally from qama yaqumu, to stand, right? Now, normally, if you think about it linguistically, standing is where you oversee. Like you say in English, like I'm overseeing matters, right? Usually, when you're standing up or you're in a higher position, you get to see the bigger picture. So the idea of leadership is to have a bigger picture. So straight off the bat, pettiness does not make sense for someone with the bigger picture, right? Because they wouldn't jeopardize the bigger picture for some small issue, right? So Qama is actually to do with really three main ideas, right? We could say that the ideas are to do with the ayah, not just the word qawwam. The ideas are supervision, leadership, provision, and service. The reason why I say service is because it says, وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. That in the ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and due to what they spend from their wealth. Okay? So here is something where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing, and the Mufassirun have discussed this in some detail, about something that men have or that they're equipped with to be in a position of leadership within the family home, right? And then also because that they are providers, do you see? And from that, we have more details that come from this. There's many hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, what was the Prophet like at home? مَا يَصْنَعُ فِي بَيْتِهِ. What did he do in his house? And she would say, قالت كان يكون في مهنة أهله. That he used to be in service, to his family. And it says ta'ani in the commentary or the additional information you get is, it says ta'ani, like that he's in khidmah. The word khidmah is used. So we don't actually have a problem with someone in service to his wife, serving his wife. There's other hadith, they have some da'af in it, but we have so many other hadith that we talk about khayrun nas, anfa'ahumun nas, best of the people are the ones who are beneficial to others. Sayyidun nas, khadimuhum. Sayyid, the master of the people, is the khadim of the people. So to be leader of all the people is to be in service of the people. So, I think the wife can count as the people, right? So we got this idea that we're in service. There's nothing wrong with this. But when does that become something that is a favor, something that is owed? Because there's a difference. One requires acknowledgement, one requires appreciation. And if the husband and wife don't know what is their actual role, are you saying thank you? It gets really messy amongst couples these days because they've got liberal culture, traditional culture, Islamic culture, all mishmash into one. Blurred lines. So, are you saying thank you? So you wouldn't notice this. Maybe in the first week of marriage, they would be like, thank you. Oh yeah, you're welcome. He didn't know that when he said you're welcome, that he's meant to do it. And she's being nice for saying thank you. You don't know, right? Nobody knows. Nobody knows whether they actually owe it or not. And the reason is because their leadership was not outlined from day dot. So I want to mention this because we have to, we see a problem within our community. We see that there is, just as well as we can, and there's another podcast coming up about the obedient wife, the submitted wife. We've got no problem with that. Our wives are delivering it, right? Our issue is what about the leadership? Like if a company, I watch these, those funny, it's not funny, but those, when this guy in Tokyo Stock Exchange or whatever starts losing all the money for his company, and then he starts bowing and going like, like this, and crying and bowing, right? Crying and bowing, yeah? Maybe 200 years ago, he'd have to have his head cut off by a samurai or something, right? But he offers himself that, I let the company down because he's the leader, right? He was at the helm. He was doing that hedge fund, whatever, investment, whatever, right? And he screwed up and he lost his company money. So there's an idea that if the children and the wife are mistaken, if they are disobedient, if they are rebellious, and even that needs to be highlighted. What is rebellion? Because sometimes we find that men can take something that is the freedom that Allah has given a human being. Right. We take that as a rebellion. We'll take that as disobedience. So we need to, again, distinguish. Blurred times, we need to get some clarity on this. But what you will find is normally is if a head of year has something fail, like the students get bad grades this year compared to the previous year, the head of year is going to get the chop as well, or she's at least going to be accountable for that issue. You can't just say, oh yeah, it's the students, oh it's the teachers, because you manage the teachers, exactly. Right? So there is a sense that definitely my money is her money, and my money isn't her money. Right? I don't know who's been saying these things, right? My money is her money is her money. No, her money is her money. My money is my money. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. And what they spend from their money. So Allah says it's their money is their money. Yeah, according to Allah. Right? And then obviously you have the word anfaqa. Anfaqa, you guys are doing sarf with me now. Anfaqa, yunfiqu, anfiq. Yes? Infaq, munfaq. It means to spend. And this expenditure in the ayah could relate to the mahar, the nafaqah, the spending money, right. So it could relate to many. It relates to many of the expenses related to providing for the wife. So those are the things such that if one wasn't providing, this could be grounds for getting a khula, right. Or a fasq. A lot of people don't know the difference between talaq and khula and fasq. Khula is where the husband could give the wife the right to say, should we still be married or not? And this is like wakala, right. And she says thing, and then he accepts it. Or they mutually agree that because you can't provide, let's go our separate ways. Right. But the quda or the qadi, he could come, or in a Sharia council, which is like the standing committee, as it were, for now, replacement committee, they could cancel fasq, like fasqul bay'. They could cancel the contract, right. On the grounds that you're not providing, right? And when we're talking about providing, we're talking about luxuries, we're talking about necessities, right? We're talking about, that level of provision. But what I'm showing is that this one ayah has so much information, right? So much benefit, so much value for the brothers to learn if we centered ourselves around the Quran. You see, just to know what qawwam is. Yeah, what is qiwama? Yeah, what does it mean to be ar-rijalu qawwamun ala nisa? Yeah, so there's lots of discussion to have there. I'll be honest with you, my mind is bursting with like so many different topics we could, so many ways to skin this cat, right? Yeah. So many ways to discuss this. But I think we'll start by saying that there is something interesting about being a supervisor, having a supervisory role, and having a providing role and a serving role. You see, a husband does serve his wife and his children. Yeah, he is to educate them. He is to provide food for them, clothing for them, and so on. Yeah. But what's interesting is it's important that people maybe employ a little bit of logic here, right? For example, I'll give you a little example. If you have a bun, and you have a loaf, categorically, you could say the main category, you could call them both bread. Yep. Right? Now, if you're trying to be specific in a conversation of, you need clearer definitions, you don't mention what both of those things share. So there's lots of things that both husband and wife share equally within a marriage, right? So if they share something, you wouldn't say, that's what makes a husband. That's what makes a wife. Do you see? So The idea is to think how the husband has to min amwalihim. Yeah, he provides.
Yeah.
So now that is distinct between the husband and wife. This is what we call equity. It may not be equal, but there is equity between men and women in Islam.
Yeah.
Right? So now we say, okay, he has this responsibility. Okay. And in terms of the women's responsibility, in this liberal age, many Muslims, men and women, don't know that they're liberal when they're speaking. How is that? Islam fundamentally, and I want to set the tone in this, inshallah, right? Islam, first and foremost, fundamentally is, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, alaykum anfusakum. Save yourself. That means that we can look to all of our relationships with other people, but we need to first and foremost be able to look within and take responsibility. Because no one is going to credibly credibly obey someone who isn't taking responsibility. Do you see? Right? And this comes up, I do a lot of marriage counseling, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives. And my God, the amount of time that men come to a counseling situation where they're demanding a shari'i right to be followed in certain things, right? And they are not providing the shari'i duty to their wife. Right. But here's another point that comes from that. A lot will just say, I work, so therefore I can just be a slob. I can be a hairball in a tracksuit or whatever. And I can just, now she has to follow. Here's the issue, yeah? If we're talking about good management, we're talking about what actually gets a motivated, functioning, happy team. Yeah, a happy team, is a motivated and happy team, is a successful team, right? So if you're going to say, oh, I just provide, therefore this, the question is yes, that person should do that. But think about, you're using the Sharia as the basis for why she should do something. Yeah. Okay? You're not weaponizing. Surely you're doing it because you want, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yeah? That you want this right that you have that is in your interest, and there's nothing wrong with having something in your interest. At the end of the day, marriage is a nikah. Nikah is a form of contract. Yeah. It's part of mu'amala. So it's between you and the other person. I mean, I don't buy and sell in business, as a worship. Yeah. I buy and sell in business, but I do it according to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants it, and therefore it becomes a worship. So it's not the same as like salah. Yeah. This transaction, there is something that is being exchanged and something that is mutually beneficial, right? For the man and the woman, for the husband and the wife. And I know I'm doing a lot of ground setting, but I think it's important. I think it's relevant.
Framing
things, because otherwise, but here's the thing. It's about credible qawwam. The key phrase I want people to take away today is credible qawwam. So if once you need to teach your children, you don't even know how to recite Quran properly. And by the way, do you know the reason I always mention tajweed? Tajweed is a early indicator what you've been doing in your life. What have you been doing in your life? How have you been spending your life? Tajweed is the very essential thing to make your salah valid.
That's true.
Yeah. So a person, sometimes, in these counseling sessions, you just think to yourself, your salah probably isn't even valid, right? And you're how credibly are you to hoist this flag and say, here's my shari'i right? Shari'i right is only as powerful as the person's attachment to the sharia, isn't it? Yeah. So if a person sees that the leader, in which situation does this work? Tell me in any workplace where the leader is not passionate about the business, not passionate about the product, not interested, not in any way bothered, how that permeates throughout all the subordinates, right? That position, how does it not affect all the subordinates, right? I've never seen it happen. The truth is that being a credible leader isn't the same as leader. Like, for example, a dad is a biological father of a child, right? Within wedlock, and you could just say that is a dad. But if you're not around for 30 years and you're going to live in another country and you say, my wife's too much, and you just go and live back home and just leave your wife and the kids to fend for themselves. Although you are a dad by name, in terms of substantively, are you really the dad?
Exactly.
You can call up and say, I want the family to be run like this. How much are you spending on the milk powder? Calling from Pakistan, calling from Bangladesh, let me put a webcam on. I want to see what's going on in the cupboard.
Exactly.
Yeah. How credible is this? How credible is this? Is that if you're
not on the ground doing the work.
You're not on the ground, you're not managing, you're not actually taking an active role in your family, you're not credible. And this is part of muhasabah. You know, this is why Umar ibn al-Khattab, and I don't think anyone doubts the manhood of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, you know, where he says, you know, حاسبوا قبل أن تحاسبوا, you know, حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. Yeah, you know, account yourselves before you're accounted.
Yeah.
You know, and another statement of the Salaf was تعلموا قبل أن تسودوا. Yeah, learn before you get you get in a position of responsibility. When you get into siyada, before you become a leader, right? So, you know, if you're doing wala zwalin, you don't. I've had in counseling sessions where the wife said, I have never seen in 15, 20 years my husband even pick up a Quran.
Yeah.
Right? The children can't learn from him. That's why he has to offset that and give it to a madrasa, thinking that that's you fulfilled your role as a qawwam. No, that's called wakala, meaning Allah doesn't say. Allah says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Save yourself and your family. Save yourself and your family. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. So the responsibility is on your family. Wa ahlikum, not ahli. His ahlahu or ahluha. Yeah, Allah is telling you save your family. So when does the madrasa imam come into this? That person is that you could teach even Quran. You can teach how to pray. You can teach fiqh of tahara. You can teach all these things. Yeah. But due to busy and everything else, and there's other maybe in another parenting podcast, it's sometimes good when someone else is doing all the strictness and punishing and not the dad. Yeah. So you can, for that reason, and it's one of the reasons why I do it, you can hire someone to do what you were going to do. Yeah. So that's cool. Like, what would you call that? Wakala. To make someone your wakil. What's a good word for that actually?
So not wakil.
Yeah.
Wakil is the actual.
But in English, I'm saying it's someone who's basically acting on your behalf. To put it simple, yeah.
Proxy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, that's good.
Yeah, proxy. Yeah, it's very political, but yeah, proxy. But that's what it is, right? You're asking someone to do something on your behalf, and as a result of that, by the way, if your children aren't succeeding in madrasa, you need to go and shout at the imam or shout at them and whatever, because you just think, because I paid, everything's magically going to get done. You have to support them at home.
Just very quickly, it reminds me, I've seen this video online. It reminds me of where somewhere in the Middle East, you know how they have the maid, you know, and she kind of takes over the mother's role almost in raising the kids. And then the maid has to go back to the Philippines or somewhere in Africa or Nigeria, wherever it is. And the kids are just distraught that the maid is going, because they have such a bond with the maid who literally raised their kids from birth, cooked and cleaned them. That is something that should be the mother's role, isn't it?
Well, here's the thing though, in fiqh, it's not necessarily the case. Look, if the maid was doing something that the mother is also doing, not, you know, I don't know how to cook, I don't know how to clean, I don't do anything, and I get a maid, because you can have maids. Yeah, and actually culturally, back home, many of us, families and people have had maids, have had servants in the house anyway. It's kind of normal. The real question is the same point as the madrasa teacher, and with respect, it's not about what the wives are up to. We're talking about the dads. That yes, a wife can have a maid, right?
Sure.
But the point is that should the kids think of the maid like their mum? They can have a strong connection. There's nothing wrong even with a strong connection. But is the strong connection only for the maid, while the mother has no connection with them because she's not credible?
Trying to allude to. Not that the wife shouldn't have a maid or anything like that.
You could have a maid if you got the money. Go get yourself a maid.
Knock yourself out. It was more so that ensuring that the wife by default has that first and foremost, that bond like the husband has.
Right. So you know, we're going to fixate on the man here, because with three men here, we're doing accountability. So if and in Taraweeh, you can go to the masjid, and maybe you should go to the masjid, you know, as much as you can, right? Yeah. But if one day you don't go to the masjid, maybe, you know, you have a bit of a very good iftar. Sometimes you don't go to the masjid because you eat around a cousin's house. Doesn't that happen?
Exactly.
If you go and eat around a cousin's house, you don't necessarily go, okay, that's it, it's 1 hour, I've got to go to the mosque. You might actually stay for a bit or whatever and pray.
What the host does.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you know. So here you are at home or whatever, and Taraweeh, and what's 20 rak'at look like? What does 20 rak'at or even 8 long rak'at look like? Don't know any ajza of the Quran. Just doing Qul Hu Allah, Al-Kawthar and Surah Ikhlas, basically, you know, rocking the two shortest surahs in the world, rocking, you know, Wal Asr, ironically the surah is about loss of time, and you're doing, and you're doing these things because really you can't credibly even lead a prayer. You can't lead leadership was synonymous with leading prayers, by the way. You know, when Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, when he prayed when the when the Prophet was unwell, that was symbolic of who could be also the leader, the political leader, as well as the prayer. So we've got like prayer, leader in the home, and political leader.
Yes.
You see? So again, I wonder how many who want, to, find this idea of leadership very important, but then are not even leading in their own homes, wanting Islamic leadership in the whole world, as we want, as we call for, as we speak about in all of our organizations, and yet there's no leadership in the home. How does that make sense? How can you say that, I want an Islamic leader, right? And you can't even be imam in your own house credibly. Say, I am the imam because I call myself. No, there's a big difference. That's why in Arabic I used to teach you guys al-farq bayn al-ism wal-musamma. Yeah, the difference between the name of a thing and the named thing.
Yeah,
Do you see? This, you can call it a cup. Yeah, but for some strange reason, say you end up in the loo, right? And you don't have, something to pour water with, right? You can't say, it's impossible, I'm going to just sit there in the loo and get stuck. You could use this, right? Because the ism is a mug, coffee mug, tea mug, whatever, right? But the thing that is actually being named is basically just a vessel that can hold water, right? So the difference between a dad by title and absentee dad or real dad. There's a big difference between the ism and musamma, the name of a thing, and the thing that name is pointing towards. In terms of an actual husband. So the topic, I think, where we're going towards is, first and foremost, even for the children, we are qawwam. That we are qawwam, that we are the leaders and supervisors. And easily one could argue that means that the wives are like under your supervision of how you want the children managed. Now, that seems to be quite a sore spot. That seems to be kind of spicy territory for a lot of people. Why? Because in that management, you can have, micromanaging, or you could have good management. So I was going to ask, first and foremost, turn to yourself and ask, what would you say is micromanagement and what would you say is management? And when does good management become micromanagement?
I think there is always definitely that management element where I think a good husband does lead and does management, and does management meaning does delegate. Yeah. So he may have to delegate.
Wakil, delegate. Yes.
Within certain aspects of the household, and why the sort of the domain of the house may be sort of the woman's fortress in terms of getting things done. I think the husband should and does delegate perhaps the manner in which or how the job should be executed. Now, I think where the micromanaging comes into place is where he starts to get involved perhaps in, like simple thing. You want the dishes done, for example. You expect for the dishes to be done, or you expect the house to be clean, or you expect the food to be made. You've gone out for 13, 14 hours there, you come home and you're like, no, I think you should finish off making the food like this. No, I think, don't wash the dishes like that, or don't raise the kids like this within a certain sort of degree. I think when you start to get involved in perhaps how things are being executed and not them actually being executed, I think if they're not getting done, I think there should be a space within the marriage where a husband should be able to kind of voice a view and say, look, these things aren't getting done. Is there anything I can support you in? Is there anything I can help you in? I think the problem lies in is when it kind of becomes too much around things are getting done, and you're kind of dictating in the manner in which they should be done all the time, constantly, because that very heavily really sort of depletes the woman's confidence, and it takes away from her role in being able to be independently efficient in executing what you expect for her to do within the home.
You see, I don't know. Look, if you've got, let's get a few things right. Usually, if you're delegating something, the chances are you don't know much about the thing that you're advising about. That's the whole point. Okay, the whole point is if you're away all day, you don't know. There's a funny meme, yeah. And I know sometimes feminists use it and stuff, and so forget them and stuff them, right? It's not that I don't care how they use it, but there was a meme that said, you've had all day and the whole house isn't clean, right? Or like everything, the whole house isn't clean, and she goes, "You've been working all day, and I'm not a millionaire yet," right? Right? Now, she doesn't know what work was like that day, yeah? And sometimes you have to prioritize things you do in the home, right? Sometimes you'll get two things done that are more essential, like the kids' uniforms being washed for the next day because they're coming back today from PE,
Yeah.
right? That you haven't got a clue about. And so what causes frustration in a workplace, forget men and women for just for the moment, in a workplace, when you got this job's worth, manager who comes in and everything was running fine without him anyway, and then say, they from the top down, he's helicoptered in, right, parachuted in, and he's asking all sorts of questions and stuff like that, and saying, I think if you want something to be done, you should have and at least demonstrate to be credible that you know what was being done before you spoke about it. You see? So I would advise brothers that before you critique something, think what was being done in context of what other things need doing before you come in and go, oh, you know that one thing? Because I'll be honest with you, even brothers, when they even to do it with brothers, we know this. We call it analysis without resource amongst us, yeah? Definitely. If I spend 5 hours, say we all spent 3-4 hours setting up media and everything, and someone just walks in, and they're just a mug of coffee and going, oh, why would it take that long, right? Because you don't have a clue, do you see? And then you say, oh, it'll take that long because it shouldn't take that long because all the, you have everything written down or you have all the variables.
Why is the microphone like that? Yeah? Or use this light.
And you don't want to explain the complexity of setting something as just this. The nightmare is to get sound checks and lighting and how basic things like lighting changes based on light coming from outside, depending if it's the day or the night. If you record at the same time in the summer, there's light coming through. If you record in the same time in the winter, it's dark outside, so there isn't light coming through. You also forget that we're all probably 1 to 2 shades more tanned because it's summer. So that affects the fixed variables of the light. Do you see? And it goes on and on. Right? I'm just giving an example that you can't just walk in there, right, with a donut in your hand and go, why is it like that? Everyone dislikes that guy in the workplace.
Of course, yeah.
Similarly, at home, it's going to be a similar thing. That you need to be aware what was done instead of this. When you have more tasks than you have time, you prioritize. That means something's not getting done. Do you see? So a lot of the time, brothers who have never built anything, never managed anything in their life, the first time they ever managed anything is in marriage. That's the first time they've ever been a manager. They've not been a leader of a scout group. Yeah. They're not even been a Boy Scout. They've not been in charge of a group of youth. They've not even been in charge of their own siblings. Exactly. They're not in charge of obviously the household. They're not in charge of many things. And then they walk in and the first time they're leaders, right, is in that situation. So one of the things I'd advise brothers, because we want people to take away benefits, right, is try to demonstrate that you know what was going on before you come in and find so it's the iceberg principle, right? So you have an iceberg which has this bit that you can see that is a problem. I have not said it's not a problem, but it's so frustrating that there's this mountain or iceberg underneath the water and they just point at the thing that is sticking out the top.
No, of course.
Do you see? It's very natural in a workplace, that when I used to walk into my office and my employees were there, that they were aware of all the daily going on. Why are we doing this way? And they've adjusted. What's happening is the system I laid didn't work actually, and they adjusted and they solved the problem in the office. Yeah. And they didn't even want me to come in and get my hands dirty. So what they did is my employees, they went and do you see, this is in the past in my businesses, that's how it was like. Yeah, they used to take initiative and they used to fix things. So then what happens is this: if the person brings you in, what you're gonna say? Oh, why do I have to do everything? Why do I have to get thinking this? I'm always dragged into everything. Can't be dealt with it itself. Yeah. And the minute they take the initiative, why are you doing it differently? So if you create a situation where subordinate, and I use a subordinate in anything other than just roles, right? Just roles. There is hierarchy, but it's not tashrif, as the scholars say. It's not a greater honor in front of Allah of a man over a woman. Yes. Yeah. Do you see? It's purely just the bima faddala Allahu ba'dahum ala ba'din is just to do with the responsibility. The responsibility is higher. The overview is higher. Yeah, that every single ala kullukum ra'in, wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatihi. That all of you are shepherds, and Allah says that the Prophet says that the husband is a shepherd. He shepherds over his wife and children, and his wife is shepherds over the home and the children. Yeah. You see, بيت بعله وولده. She looks after the house of her husband, وَوَلَدِهِ. Not her house, in the sense that she is the one paying the rent and providing. He's providing, whether he's renting or leasing or whatever, mortgage, or he owns it. His house, meaning the sense that he's the one who was meant to have paid for it, right? Yeah, وَوَلَدِهِ, and his children. So the idea here is that someone is being delegated to, and you don't even have to go into it yet. Just look carefully about what good management is. That if you don't suss what's going on in the office and then you start making adjustments, you're going to annoy people. And the other thing is that if you go into that situation and you complain if you're brought in, dragged into it, and you complain if someone does something that you don't understand because they've made an adjustment, then if you create a I can't win, then that will create, again, a downward spiral for a person. Often they will start doubting themselves. Often they will be inhibited. They'll have major confidence issues. They'll have feel like that they're bad wives and they're incompetent and they're useless and they're bad moms and bad wives. All of that will start occurring because a person is micromanaging. And I'm giving you micromanage is easy just to say, don't manage too much, don't manage too less. I'm being more specific, right? Know what happened before you showed up, before you start dispensing advice.
Very, very good piece of
Yeah.
advice,
Number two is that when you give advice, suss that there is a change of plan that might have happened because there was a problem that you didn't see. Life is a lot more complicated than following a fixed plan every day. One child goes sick, one child vomits, one child, breaks, bashes his head. All sorts of different things happen every other day. Third thing is shura. Yeah. The fact that Allah commanded the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Khairul Khalq, the leader, Sayyidul Rijal, the Khatinbun Nabiyyin, and all of these titles the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. But Allah says, Shawirhum fil amr. Go discuss with the Sahaba and consult. Not in what you've been commanded to do, but in more to do with the means and the styles of things and how they get done. In terms of management, he's going to advise. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu knows certain things about lineage and other things. This Sahabi, another Sahabi will know about Persians and the war weapons that they used and what kind of spears they used. You ask another Sahabi, he has some knowledge about X, Y, and Z. You ask another Sahabi who has a higher standing within the Meccan tribes than the Prophet. So the whole point is that the third thing I think you should do is do the consultation, do the shura. Yeah, and this shura is to do with good communication. So I've also found within counseling that brothers, unfortunately, there is a major emasculation sometimes from their mothers, and there is a major emotionally stunted, unresponsive, unable to communicate sense about a lot of men. Like almost that there's this widespread, like mild Asperger's or something. And by the way, to make sure that I don't use it as a pejorative, I've met brothers with Asperger's who are so far more switched on how other people think and feel than people without Asperger's. So I don't mean it as a pejorative. What I mean is that they show these symptoms, right? Because of their lack of focus, maybe too much time with screens, maybe wallahu ta'ala alam, a mum that bullied them, and or it could be too much porn, makes them quite impulsive, because porn does create impulsive people, right? People don't think, people, they work on dopamine, so their emotions are up and down because of that. So then, so there's so many things that we could go into. But I think in regards to micromanagement, how much is too much management? I think these are three good bits of advice. Find out what happened before you go in and start. Do you see? Because it's actually easy. What I want every man to know, it's easy to point out problems. Wallahi, it's the most easiest thing in the world to think that you've spotted a problem.
Could I just ask, like as men, when we point out problems, where does that root from? Do you think that's just a sort of natural characteristic of a man with oversteering? Or do you think it's something that perhaps the father?
It's cosplay husband.
Okay.
He's basically costume drama. He's dressing himself up in what he thinks a good manager is. Yeah, and like I said, because never been in management. So obviously, so men usually kind of pride themselves on their either their brawn and as well as their intellect, being the sharp guy in the room and all of this stuff.
Since Adam and Eve, peace be upon them, relationships have always been a catalyst for building our faith. So the real question is, are you being held back. Lack of willpower and negative relationships have shackled many of us. It cannot be emphasized how much our friends, family and community can limit our horizons, prevent us uncovering our God-given potential. And so when we say Islam is a healing, are we learning Islam within a family context? Whether you plan to get married or on the verge of a divorce or want to level up your goals as a couple, the family program can be the turning point for everlasting relationships. Learn and cultivate thankfulness and forbearance mindsets to become a positive influence to yourself and others. Eventually, you will build a growth mindset that will leave you never looking back as you venture forward to a new life. The family program. Learn, heal, grow.
Now, the first thing you've pointed out is it's not just this arbitrary, just be the guy in the middle, because that's not good enough. I wouldn't do a podcast if that's what we were going to do. But what you said are some bars. First and foremost, some level of micromanagement might even be needed at the beginning. Micro meaning that you're more involved than you are delegating, okay? And so what you're going to do is you're actually going to show, train, and then leave. Right? Like I do this with my kids. I do this, I say, show you once. And then even if you want to be a keen employee, this is a top tip. When I was working for Inland Revenue, this is a long time ago, right? Yeah. Like, God, 20 years ago, right? I used to say, look, just show me once and I'll be fine. Yeah. Do you see? But I do have a right. I can't turn up, just like a wife can't turn up into marriage and be expected to know everything. Right? Or to know how to do everything, or to know how to run a family. She was someone's daughter sitting in her father's house. That's not the same as being in a marital home. Show me once, and then you sort of edge away, right? A lot of the time, that's the first point, right? That there is something that can be more hands-on, which you could put it on this scale. It could be looking like micromanagement, but all it's happening is that you're weaning yourself off that thing. Now, here's another problem. Men find that problematic because they've been taught by other men who know less about marriage than they do that, she'll get used to that, right? Yeah, don't do that. She'll get used to that. The only way someone will get used to that is if someone, let's be really clear, the only way someone will get used to that is if you didn't explain that before the marriage. If you have already explained, this is your role, you're the homemaker, I'm the breadwinner, and I can show you how to do certain things that I have knowledge of. The second important point that you made is for you to be able to do that micromanaging, did you have your mum do everything for you? Do you see? Or did your mum actually show you how to work in the house? So this idea is a silly idea that, with my boys, I get them to put their feet up while the girls are running around doing this stuff. No, my daughters, all my children will learn how to, my daughter, my son, all of them will learn how to cook. All of them will know how to clean. All of them will know how to do these things. Yeah. But for example, so this is something that is shared, cooking to eat, right? But that's shared. But some things like, for example, if there's things like the shoe rack, the handle's fallen off, then I'll pass it over to my son over there and I'll say, look, you got to go and fix that. Exactly. So there's something need repairing, something to fix. That's an additional task I want the boys to learn from that. Okay. Sometimes she used to say, Allah yarhamu, we're going to do a podcast eventually about my parents who have passed away. Allah grant them Jannatul Firdaus. Ya Allah, good memories. My mom used to, back in the day, quid was a lot. Don't mess with £1. With £1, you can get a golden wonder, a chocolate. You could get a chocolate and a crisp and a drink, right? Now, penny sweets aren't even a penny, right? Mm-hmm. So she used to say, clean all the cupboards in the kitchen. Yeah. And she was like, it's £1. It's just such a cool thing. I'm going to get a whole £1 for wiping all the cupboards in the kitchen, right? Getting the suds out, getting the sponge and cleaning everything or whatever. We had a vacuum. Yeah. This is me as a little kid, right? We had a vacuum. I said, no, that vacuum doesn't clean up all the dust out of the carpet. It just takes the surface. Yes. I'm going to brush it out until I wouldn't trust a vacuum cleaner from what I could do with my own hands. This kind of housework means that you can credibly go in there. How do you go in there and think how something should be done? By the way, you aren't anybody's husband. When your parents are in the house, you're supposed to serve them. Yes. What's this distinction about? Yes, there are specific skills they may need as husbands and wives when they grow up. But those children, his mum, there's no some sort of incestuous, undertone here. But this boy should not be talking to his mum like it's his wife or something, right? Or wife training, such silliness. That boy needs to serve his mother. Exactly. That boy needs to serve his mother out and out. So But I wanted to just understand these points, right? So that if you're going to do that, then you also need to know something about that task through your childhood, right? You can't offer something you don't have, basically. فَاقِدُ الشَّيْء لَا يُعْطِي. You don't know something, it's hard to offer that. The other thing is, in this managerial role is the need for more sabr than the people beneath you, right? You can't, like, doesn't mean that you're not going to need, being calm assertive, right? It doesn't mean that you're not going to need emotional support, but you don't get your emotional support by gritting your teeth and using wire towel is on the floor to get your emotional rocks off it, right? To get your passive aggressive out, or why is a towel on the floor? I work so hard. If you need emotional support, learn how to ask for it. Say, actually
pick up the towel.
Go to the wife.
And then
right.
Exactly,
But the issue is, you know what? God forbid, just leave the damn towel. You see, there's a problem with husbands, right? Just leave the towel. If you need emotional support, you don't need to pick up the towel.
Okay.
She don't need to pick up the towel. Leave the towel.
Okay.
Get the emotional support. You are more valuable than a rag. So get the support, isn't it?
Sound like me. I'm like, burn the towel. Who cares? Just leave the towel.
Right. No, it doesn't. It's not necessary.
Mm-hmm. I agree with
you. The simple thing is, if you want emotional support, learn how to ask for it. The Prophet ﷺ just saw Jibreel alayhi salam in every horizon, and it scared him, right to his core. He went home and he asked support, isn't it? He asked support from his family. If he didn't say, Khadija radiallahu anha, the mother of all the believers, she didn't, what's wrong, what's thing, nothing. And then 2 hours later, and then nothing, and then cuss something in the house. And then eventually she finds out what's wrong, to kind of tease it out of some sort of, no, the Prophet ﷺ came back and had the conversation. This is what's happened. How is this, why does this happen to me? What's the reason why it's happening to me? And she said, this is why it's happening to you. She's speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, validating and saying, no, you are a good person. You are trustworthy. Why wouldn't it go to you? Exactly. Right? This is the person that it should go to. Right? I know you. So I think it's very important that your sabr levels as a manager is more than everyone else's, right?
Definitely.
So yes, by all means, that where the example falls a little bit is that it's not the same as the workplace, because it isn't a workplace, it's a family, right?
Yes.
And you are supposed to get emotional support from the wife, right? And you're supposed to be appreciative of the wife and all that, I do for you, you do for me. But going back, the important thing is that sabr is required. Do you see? Because if the person at the helm has got less sabr than everyone as he's managing, as usual, again, I'm going to say this, it will not be credible. The minute you have no sabr, right? And unfortunately, one thing I will say, I'm going to just hit back for the brothers a little bit, because I think it's relevant. Most of the time, subordinates don't know when sabr is being exercised. That's the whole point. You see, sometimes wives and children, they don't know how many storehouses of sabr the husband is employing. You see, so what they'll do is they'll just think, when he's upset, you see, he's got no sabr. But what about the 99 portions, lion's share of the sabr that he's had to exercise through all of that? You see, so it's important that the other side is understood as well. But I think what you've said as a manager is such an important thing, that when you're doing good tadbir, good management of your of things, and you're delegating properly, and you're helping out, and you're being resource as well as analysis, that you don't just become an analyst. And I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest things for 20 years of my dawah life is I found men, quite frankly, it is like a crisis of masculinity or something, I don't know what it is. It's just, I find it so depressing. You got middle-aged men, you got guys in the late 30s, you got guys in the late 20s, absolutely unable to, everything is, look what's happening on the internet, look who's debating who on the internet, look what's going on in another country, in this Muslim country, look what's going on there, look what's going on at home, analysis. That's why there's a poem, I can't remember it now. He said, I went to the marketplace of words, right? Meaning analysis, right? And he said there were, the marketplace was, the aswaq were full of vendors, and the queues were endless, right? The queues were endless, meaning there were so many vendors and so many customers, people selling words and buying words, giving analysis and buying into analysis, He said, then I went to this is the marketplace of words. He goes, then I went to the marketplace of amal, and there wasn't a vendor inside. Forget the queue, there's no one to queue up if there's no vendor. It isn't for sale.
Yeah.
No one's there offering any action.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is what I found repeatedly, that men who can sit there and talk endlessly and not do anything about the ummah, endlessly and
This is
not
the
actually
lack
learn
of
their
skills,
deen,
isn't it?
endlessly
This
and
is-
dedicate a day a week or 2 days a week or something for the community, for the da'wah, for enjoining good, forbidding the evil. And because of that, they think that the whole of Islam has been done because of وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ, because of what they've spent from their wealth. That's it. I've done my full role as the leader of the family. The leader also, we've talked about management, we've talked somewhat about expenditure. One of the things is that the leader maintains the morale in the workplace.
Yes.
Morale meaning in this case, a lot of the time will be the spiritual nurturing. He's the spiritual guide. He is the muallim in the house. Again, yeah, when we said husband, we thought, oh, breadwinner means that he just wage. Yeah. But actually, what he also needs to be, he needs to be the teacher in his home. Yeah. Now, how many Muslim men can be teachers in their own home?
Not many men.
Credibly, almost at all.
Yeah.
Right? How many can actually do that? And this, so when people see this, and I'm honestly, it's not about men versus women. We've got to just put that aside just for a second. It's when you watch someone who doesn't know what he's talking about, but speak like, and they're speaking like, okay, everybody listen. It's just like a facade. It's like the emperor. They can, the emperor with no clothes. And the children and everyone around can see. We've had this, in our workplaces. We had a manager come in, and you can clearly see he hasn't got a clue, right? But he has to play out the whole "I'm in charge" thing, right? Yeah. And everybody just thinking, what a useless, right? This guy is so not all of a sudden. So, you prop up all of a sudden and you start saying, making all these religious sounds. When you and yourself are not religious. I'm talking about people with beards and they go Jummah when they're at work, they go Jummah, they do that, they pray, etc. But it's like, I've seen my husband pick up a Quran for like a decade. Yeah, he doesn't read Quran. And he can't lead the prayer. Can't lead. You want to lead. You don't ever want to lead when it comes to actually leading. Leader is when it suits you. Yeah. When a person's seen to use the word leader when it suits them, right? Not only is this tyranny from that, but also they're not credible. And what I'm trying to say is that credibility is very, very important if you want to motivate and win hearts and minds. If you think the Muslim world is all about, we took over from China to Spain. Yeah. This is the greatest form of leadership. We rule from the, 2/3 of the known world, from China to Spain. We were ruling all these lands. If you're saying that means you are posing the argument that Islam was just spread by the sword. There was no intellectual hearts and minds, process. It was just, so that means you run your home like this with the sword.
Exactly.
We won the lands just through, at the bottom of a sword. People just became believers. They don't really believe. They just got scared. They didn't want to pay the dhim tax or whatever, right? Yeah. Right? And the jizya and everything. So they thought, you know what? Fair enough. We'll just become Muslim. Yeah. Just surrendered captives. And now we run our marriages based on how we perceive the world, our great history to be. Just surrendered captives.
Do you think there's insecurity around men who may say that I'm the leader? Do you think a person kind of lacks that secure understanding of what a leader is if he always has a need to say in his home to his wife and his kids, I'm the leader, you should obey me, you should respect me? Do you think that's just coming from an insecure?
It can. I'm not saying, it can. It can, because a lot of the time, the ones who are the least capable keep reminding everybody who's in charge. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you see? Mm-hmm. So that should actually be within your budget. And there's this whole thing about Muslim women, running off doing counseling courses and how, they're getting messed up and coming home and saying their husband has 5 out of 6 signs of narcissism. And, based on the government definition, he's financially controlling and he's an abuser and a narcissist. One of the reasons is because while the cat's out, the mice come out to play. Yeah? You've been asleep, bro. The point we're making is you've been asleep, bro. You've been asleep at the wheel for too long. Do you see? So when they try to find a recourse outside of Islam, because they have justified grievances. Yes. So similarly, if you're not managing things, if you don't have a plan, people will come up with a plan. Do you see? All this craze about, everyone wants to become a counselor. They want to become God after 35-week course. I think, be careful, right? Because actually what you need to do is you need to study Islam first, right? To know what you take and don't take. Now, I know I've veered into counseling, but the reason why I'm mentioning this is because Islamic education is something that the husbands should do their level best to try and cultivate because remember, the husband's primary role is a breadwinner. He does have a secondary and tertiary role. The wife's primary role is a mother and a wife. But that isn't her only other role. Yeah. Exactly. Many of the verses about da'wah, enjoining good, forbidding the evil, hisbah, khidmah, serving the poor, they all include the women.
Yeah.
They all include the women. So I just want to finish this arc of this point to say that that means that how can you now even credibly pay, credibility is the key, credible leadership is today the key phrase here.
Yeah.
Say, go off and study, and she's now studying like fiqh, level 3 of fiqh or something, and you can't even recite Surah Al-Fatiha. But it's something that you should do. My question is that why don't you study together? Right? And why? And if you're not studying together for some short-term reason, you know, funny thing is that I didn't study the deen, you know, in any great, as in formally. I was always, alhamdulillah, I came from a family that was always interested in Islamic sciences and studying Islam. And, you know, my life was gazing at my older brother's bookshelf, you know, and just being inspired about ilm because of him. That's where the respect came from. That's where the love came from. However, you know, in my 20s, I was like so busy in business, setting things up that I was saying to my wife, look, I don't know. You know what? This is hidayah. When you come up with something good and you can't see it come from yourself, like you can't even think of how you came up with it. I just had this feeling that later on in life, if we achieve anything, it will be me achieving things and not my wife. And I don't want to be resented later on that, you know, the only thing I've done. So if a wife thinks that there's other things other than being a wife and a thing, doesn't necessarily mean that she's boss babe, she wants to go and do business and all of this stuff. There are other aspects, and her spiritual self is a major aspect of herself. Her spiritual needs are a major aspect of herself. The fact that she sees people dying in Gaza, you think it doesn't hurt her as much as it hurts you? So she wants to do something. So are you facilitating that? Do you see? Right? Similarly, when brothers want to go and do dawah, the wife will say, oh, that day you could have been working, now we can't have the extension for the house. Or now the wife wants to go out and say, oh, this washing's left and you're learning deen. These sort of cusses, experts at making dig. But what should happen is actually supporting the learn. And I just thought, you know, go and learn. She went to many institutes and tried to do all that. She did the levels until they had no levels left. They repeated the same levels again because they couldn't do the upper levels. There wasn't enough students in these institutes. And my wife just said, okay, I'll just do it again then. She just repeated the levels. But that served me, you know, well, because then when I got on the whole Talibul Ilm Malaki, right? When I wanted to study abroad and this and the other, my wife was ahead, and it was the intellectual crutches I needed to get to, you know, where we got to together. But what I'm saying is that is another aspect, which is part of your tadbir. It's like, oh, I don't care. She got prayer mat. She can do prayer. That's it. Her spiritual needs, you know, we have to remember, that, you know, we're not, a wife is not like a pet Cherokee or something, you know, put sandpaper, put newspaper at the bottom, give it some seeds. Here's a little water thing to peck and get water out of, right? Yeah. The idea is that, provision, beyond the material is the other aspects of provision. You see, what does that money actually get spent on? Yeah. And if you're yourself a bit of a thrill chaser, cinemas and holidays and barbecues with the cousins and going to the in-laws, then to the other in-laws, and then more cousins and then more cousins and more cousin gathering, and then this, and it's endless, kutumbari stuff. What tends to happen is that that's training your wife to be a socialite. That's training her that all her time is just spent chilling with people. Do you see? Have you said, let's go together and form friends based on studying the deen?
That's beautifully put.
Look, if you go gym, you know, Sheikh Akram said a really nice thing. He said, you don't buy a cow, you buy the cow for the milk, not the manure. And we used to always look at him like, what is these perplexing statements, right? He said, look, when you get a cow, you want to think about, you know, how much milk it can produce and all that. Manure is a byproduct anyway. So people chase friends and socialize. Brothers have friends that are not productive for their deen. Sisters have friends that are not productive for their deen. And the reason is because the marriage was not set up for the deen in the first place, for that purpose, right? As that's the direction it's going. That's not the trajectory of the marriage anyway. And now it's set up where you have to now maintain relationships that you have a strong bond with, and you know you're wasting your life away, but you have to do it because you have to maintain that friendship. But what normally happens is so that's what you call the friendship is basically the manure in this case. Why I'm saying is this, because if you go to the gym because you want to be healthy, you'll make gym mates. If you go to an institute to go and learn the deen, you'll have a friend that you want to share notes when you don't come in, right? Did you record the class? Have you got recording or have you got notes? Exactly. Right? So you'll end up getting friends when you go to class, you'll end up getting friends when you go to gym, and you'll end up getting friends when you're, you know, doing something else useful. So if you live a productive and useful life, you'll pick up the friends anyway. You don't have to go and actively make friends. But again, a lot of dads and their mates and their WhatsApp groups is constantly talking about, I'm going to go Dubai, I'm going to do this fake hijrah, not prophetic hijrah, but pathetic hijrah. Just I'm going to go there, I want to live a nice life, and just constantly fantasizing about, second wife and Dubai and this, that, and the other, and not actually putting the effort in what's going on in their backyard. So then when she says, you know what, Islam seems to have gatekeepers, and it seems to be this Imam isn't really saying anything useful, right? This Maulana isn't really saying anything useful, right? Related to me, right? Just keep doing what you're doing, just keep cooking and cleaning. And he isn't saying anything useful. I need a back door to my happiness. So then they say, I'm going to this counseling Malaki. Do you see? Right? Again, I've got nothing wrong with counseling. We run a counseling organization. We have multiple counselors and qualified people, and we have our own counseling course starting up in Islamic counseling course starting in September anyway, right? Under our Ummatics department and collaboration with Al-Madad Outreach, our counseling and mediation organization. Shameless plug intended, right? Right? But if the cat, cat's out or he's asleep, the mice come out to play. And what's happening is that a lot of people are leading them in their marriages too late. They become, 10 years of neglect, and then I'm a leader. Now you play out father and son, because I think father and son relationships, you'll get better because it's marred with all this gender wars. Yeah. So let's take the gender war out. Let's take out the venom for a minute. If a dad hasn't seen you intentionally for 10 years, he's not seen you for 10 years. He's intentionally ignored you for 10 years. And then all of a sudden he bowls in after 10 years, right? And then he's like, listen to your father. You shouldn't, is he the father or not? Does the Quran say he's the father or not? He is the father. Wallah, he's the father. Does he have the right? Wallah, he has the right. Wallah, he has the right. But here's the issue. That kid's going to go, where were you when I got bullied in school? Where were you, right, when I needed to learn how to shave? Where were you when I was going through puberty? Where were you when I didn't even know what it meant to be a man? I had to work out all of this by myself. And then you bowl in 10 years later, and then you go, you shouldn't. You see, you can feel, and I can feel why anyone would be irritated in that situation. Husbands have been asleep for a long time, as from my experience. So yes, the plural of anecdote isn't a statistic, but from my experience, husbands have been asleep for a long time. They wake up really, really late. Yeah. كل الناس نيام فإذا ماتوا انتبهوا. Imam Ali radiallahu anh says, everyone is asleep, and when they wake up, then they become alert and they are in shock. Sometimes we're sleepwalking through our marriages. Many, many men think that because I pay the electricity bill, right, that's it, because I pay the rent, that means that I've done my job. And there's so much to do as a husband than just that. Yeah. But of course, all of those things could not happen if you can't finance it. There is an existential matter of having to earn a living. Because if you don't do that, the other things can't happen. There's an undertone here that people might misunderstand or be offended, right? Is a wife a hireling, an employee? Is a wife a child that we're infantilizing, and saying, what we're talking about is just literally hierarchy, right? And these just happen to be other hierarchies.
Skills, exactly.
But one sister, I remember in the family program, she just said, look, I'm just going to give it to you straight, right? My husband, he's there, right? And she's saying, look, he can't really do things, like he's a bit useless, basically, yeah? Right. And the husband's turned around and going, I am, right? He's being honest that, but she said, what do I do when I know what to do? What do I do when I know more than my husband? So here's the point. If, for example, there's imam in the masjid, these things actually happened, right? I don't want to give locations, but there's different sects. Right. So this imam is part of a particular sect, right? Right. And what happens is let's just say Sufis and Salafis, and I won't give the location, right? People who have a more Sufi orientation, some Salafis. So this Sufi Imam or whatever, he's leading the Salah, and they're praying behind him, don't worry, he's not Muqtadi in that sense, right? They're praying behind him. But his tajweed has some little faults, some little things, right? But he's the Imam. This is a maqam that he has. What they're doing is they're very, like when he's reading, they're going, Ta'ala, like literally while he's reading, really belting out his mistake, right? Almost like that they're sitting there in ambush mode, when he goes to pray, he's getting ambushed, right? So they're just looking. Now, there's many ways to deal with that, right? Then to kind of correct him with a tone in your throat, like as if you're shouting at him like you're his dad, exactly. Because one thing, you've become his dad, and you're relishing and you're enjoying his mistake. And then what they did is they even went to non-Muslims and because there's an interfaith thing that is managed by non-Muslims, and the faith-based stuff, Muslims, Jews, Christian, right? They went and even G'd each other up, right? They went there and made a complaint so that they could have him removed. So you go to non-Muslim, to remove your own imam, right? Instead of
helping
correcting.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why we cannot be united as an ummah, and as a marriages where we're so disunited.
And going to divorce and stuff.
So then what happens is that then they got rid of him. Well done. You got what you wanted. So now they have their guy there. We want our guy there. Yeah.
Okay.
So now you got Salafi Imam. Yeah. Now all these other brothers behind, a large section of them, right, are from the other quarter, from the other side, right?
Okay.
So now when he's reading any small daqiq like issue, any little mistake,
They're all pouncing as well. Oh,
nobody's praying today. Nobody's praying anymore. Yeah, what's happening is they are knocking down the previous authority, and the previous authority, people who are knocked down, now they're knocking them down. Everyone's just knocking each other down. So I said to the sister, when she said, what happens, if I know more than my husband? I said, well, just because you know more than the husband doesn't mean you wear the pants. Okay,
help him,
that's what I said. I said, doesn't mean you wear the pants. What you do is, when you know something your husband does, you help him lead.
Exactly.
Right? You don't then, just like that tajweed thing. Just because you know something doesn't mean now you're the imam. And then now you're imam, everyone's complaining about you.
Yeah.
Right? Help him lead. So if he doesn't know something, help him lead. Don't then say, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Right? Because the whole point is that you want him to be a good qawwam, and you want to be his ahl, and you want to be his family, and you want to be someone who's supportive.
Exactly.
So every time you find a flaw, doesn't mean now he can't make any decisions. It may mean, for example, that a husband might do 90% of his own mind and 10% shura, because he actually has most things sussed out, and even his wife will agree, he knows what he's doing. Some husbands will need 90% shura to get anything done in their life. I'm going to be honest, that's what we have to also appreciate, that now we learn that people's intelligence and ability is on a spectrum, right?
Yes, they are.
It's on a spectrum. There are some people who are going to need a lot of hand-holding by their wife, right? To get things done. There are people who don't speak the language the wife is filling in the form. There are people who don't know what to say at the job interview. The wife is doing practice job interviews with them. There are people who don't know how to deal with their own family members. Their wife is advising, do it like this, and you'll see they'll be happy with you. So these things are not to be weaponized, right? Do you see? Because if you're part of the same organization, if you're part of the same company, the company makes money if you both do your role well. So why would you be unhappy if the company is doing well? Why would you want whichever role? All you care about is that the company makes money.
Exactly.
Because if it does well, we do well. So the family is this entity that if it does well, we as individuals in the marriage do well. But we don't. It's now become just two limited liability companies within a marriage. It's just a meeting of two limited liability companies. Look, we've said a lot of things, and we've discussed this, and I actually benefited from what you consider micro and macro, and you've spurred on quite a lot of interesting discussions. And as for yourself, in terms of you said it's a sliding scale, right? And you gave many, many examples of how in our upbringing, many of the lessons of being a qawwam is actually learned by serving our parents. Birrul walidain has a very, very strong connection with being qawwamun ala nisa. So jazakumullahu khair for that, and jazakallahu khair from you. I hope we have made more light than heat, inshallah. And this conversation, I don't think is the end.
No,
I think it's the beginning. If I may speak for myself, and maybe because I spoke a lot, that I really enjoyed this conversation, however brief. My advice to brothers who are being in charge is go to the one who leads us all. Go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes and his sifat, when you learn about him, he is most knowledgeable. That is connected to him being Al-Hakim, most wise. Are we knowledgeable? How are we going to be wise? He is Al-Qawi. We look at this as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certain traits that are to do with his might and some things to do with his beauty, might and beauty. We describe the attributes that some of them are to do with the avenger, the one who will, the most powerful, the most strong, the most mighty, right? The almighty, the avenger, Allah has all of these names. These are to do with his quwwah and his might. But then we have on this side that he is Rafiq, he's Jameel, Inna Allah Jameel, Inna Allah Rafiq. We have hadith related to this. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Latif. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. You see, we know that He is all of these things. He is Halim. Yeah. All of these things, Sabbar, and, and so we know on one side He is so forgiving and patient. On the other side, He is Fa'al. He, is very deliberate and does whatever He wants. So these two forces that we see perfection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we discuss perfection, we see these forces, these attributes working in a way that we can't fully comprehend.
Yeah.
But when we see these things filter down to the creation, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us means to have, not in a way, laysa kamithlihi shay, nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but those attributes connected not to His that, His essence, but these attributes connected to our essence as bashar, as human being, as weak people, that actually tempering between strength, you see, and mercy, and gentleness, you see, with power,
balance. Yeah, exactly.
and might, with being forgiving. These are not weaknesses, these are the strengths. That's why we describe them as virtuous attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To find the balance between those two things is actually what we also must manifest in ourselves as the slaves of Allah Azza wa Jal. That our source of good is Allah, that we know that we have our objective moral anchors, and our objective moral anchors for the good is all of those 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that good is meant to be for us to be godly men, to be men that are muttaqis, and therefore those attributes need to be shown. You see, unfortunately, what we have is a hyperbolized, extreme version based on people trying to sell protein shakes and just products basically on TikTok and Instagram and all of these things. It very rarely is about rujula itself. So my advice to brothers is, if you want to know what it means to be a man, go to the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. Rujula, muru'ah, futuwa, it's all in you can learn all of these concepts from the Quran, and that will make a Quranic family and a Quranic marriage. Inshallah. Jazakumullahu khair. I hope this has been interesting for those who have who are now watching this live, and those who have picked up on it later. Yeah, how very dare you, right? But if you're watching it later, alhamdulillah, leave us some comments, some of your feedback. Inshallah. Jazakumullahu khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Since Adam and Eve, peace be upon them, relationships have always been a catalyst for building our faith. So the real question is, are you being held back? Lack of willpower and negative relationships have shackled many of us. It cannot be emphasized how much our friends, family, and community can limit our horizons and prevent us uncovering our God-given potential. And so when we say Islam is a healing, are we learning Islam within a family context? Whether you plan to get married or are on the verge of divorce or want to level up your goals as a couple, the family program can be the turning point for everlasting relationships. Learn and cultivate thankfulness and forbearance mindsets to become a positive influence to yourself and others. Eventually, you will build a growth mindset that will leave you never looking back as you venture forward to a new life. The Family Program. Learn, heal, grow.